Welcome. I'm Dustin Olson, and I'm going to be speaking with you here for a few minutes at the American Pulse headquarters. It's late on a Monday night here on September 11th, 2023, and I was going to talk to you a little bit about some recent news items and our polling in the news, some articles on foxnews.com, as well as 538, and also my recent interview with the legendary newsman Bill O'Reilly, which we'll play here in a moment. But first, if you'd like to ask any questions about any news items, anything that's in the news, any recent polling, please do feel free to go ahead on, especially on Facebook. I believe you can post comments, or also on Twitter. I'll be sure to go and post later and see what people have to say there. So feel free to join the conversation. Also, if you'd like to get all of our polling, you can go to pollingclub.com. As I believe you can see right up there, there's a QR code that will show you how to get to pollingclub.com. Or you can also, if you'd like to commission your own survey, you can go to AmericanPulse.us and do so there. Any kind of market research that you might be wanting to do, you can do that there as well. But first, I wanted to go into last week. I had an interview with Bill O'Reilly, the legendary newsman, as I said, and we talked about the upcoming GOP primary. We talked about the influence of the media on the primary and other news items, and wanted to share that with you. So while I play this, feel free to post any comments or questions, and I'll be back with some other thoughts I have from this interview with Bill O'Reilly.
So joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Republican pollster Dustin Olson. He works for the American Pulse Research and Polling Center. Okay, so let's run down where the Republican challengers are now. Did anybody break out of the first debate, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I would say that looking at all the recent polls, including our polls and other people's polls, that there's been a trend over the last few months that Donald Trump is solidifying his position. So a lot of people, I think, correctly have called that the undercard debate. But have people pulled out? I would say that Nikki Haley did some good for her. You see that she's bumped up in New Hampshire. She's now close to tied with DeSantis, as well as Vivek Ramaswamy seems to have a lot of the energy behind him. And as I've been looking at the race recently, we're not backing anybody. Currently, we have people in our polling firm actually who are tied to people on both sides of the aisle in this race. However, what we're seeing is that the race is solidly behind Trump at like 58, 59, 60%. And ultimately, this is about who's the second choice in case of emergency break glass. Who is it going to be if Trump were not to be on the field? And honestly, on the other side too, in the Democrat Party, the same thing. Right now, the president has 90% of the support in that primary, but people are also looking for someone as an alternative there.
But it's a different situation because Trump is going to run no matter what. And all this BS about he's not going to be allowed to run because of the insurrection, that's just BS. It's just garbage. Constitution is clear, Trump can run. But on the Democratic side, I don't believe Biden is going to run. His numbers are so terrible. He's declining mentally, as everybody knows. And then the next 2 months, the Republicans are just going to hammer him about the grifting and the money to his family. And it's just not, it's going to be untenable. And on the Republican side, when you say, okay, say Trump gets run over by a bus tomorrow, then the race changes, obviously, because Trump's out of it. He's not alive. But as long as he is alive, I don't see, based upon the first debate, and the second one's coming up in 4 weeks or 3.5 weeks, I don't see any of those people on the stage coming close to him. Do you?
No, I don't. And it's interesting. You know a lot more about the media than I do, but in a normal situation, if someone had 59% of the vote, we would treat that as a non-race. We would look at that as there's really nothing to see here. Yet for some reason we're propping this up like it's actually an actual real race.
That's a media thing, right? I mean, that's a Fox News thing, and they're just propping it up. Now, the Republican contenders are caught because the MAGA movement is so much a part of the Republican primary system. If you go to attack Trump like Christie, all right, the MAGA immediately hates you and you'll never get their votes. So the others, they can't attack the front runner or they just have no chance. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. So actually, if you look at Ron DeSantis, who's the second choice, he's the number one second choice for people. The number one second choice for people who are supporting Ron DeSantis is Donald Trump. So if Ron DeSantis goes hard at Donald Trump, all he's doing is undercutting himself. Same thing with Vivek Ramaswamy,
Right.
though, as we've seen, he's very much, I think it seems like he understands that he's only going to be the nominee.
And he's going to be on this program on the No Spin News in mid-September.
Which is smart.
It is smart because I got lots of questions for Ramaswamy. And he's, here's why it's smart. He said he's not going to duck anybody. If there's anybody that he should duck, it's probably me, because I know a lot about history and foreign affairs, and that's where he's weakest. But he's a man of his word, number one, which is important to me. And number two, we will have a fair and lively debate when he comes on. I'll give the information at the end of the week on how we're going to handle that. Final question for you. Yep. The Democrats know they're in trouble. I mean, all the polls say that. They know they're in trouble, even though they're going to support whoever the Democratic nominee is. Doesn't really matter to them who it is. But they know they're in trouble with Biden because independents, they know Biden is a failed president. Short of Michelle Obama, who's a game changer, but we still don't have any indication she's going to run, is there anyone that you see that's got a pulse on the Democratic side who could step in if Biden doesn't run?
That's a great question. We recently did a survey in New Hampshire, and we probed with questions with Democrats, what are they wanting? And the truth is, most people in New Hampshire across party lines don't want Biden to run again. And 1 out of 4 Democrats actually admit that they don't want him to run again. When we gave them a chance to say who they would like, Gavin Newsom showed up, as well as Bernie Sanders, which I think some other polls have shown that as well. So those are the names that are bubbling up to the top. And it's hard to imagine that California would get exported to the rest of the country. However, that is what Democrats are thinking about. Anyway.
Okay. Well, he'd have a lot of money. Newsom would have a lot of money. But I agree with you. California is so far out there, I can't see it happening. Hey, Dustin, really appreciate it. I hope you'll check back in with us from time to time as the race unfolds. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that. And I sure did enjoy having that conversation with Bill O'Reilly. And one of the things that he talked about was his interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. And we recently had an article with some of our recent polling in FiveThirtyEight, and the guys over there do a great job. They did a survey specifically, or an article specifically about Vivek Ramaswamy is climbing, where can he go? And specifically, they pointed out that even though Ron DeSantis was in the second place position, ultimately the person who got the second most time during that debate was Vivek Ramaswamy, as well as at one point he briefly surpassed Donald Trump in Google searches. And so they wanted to see where he can go. And they actually pointed out one of our recent surveys back in August that showed that while with voters older than 65, that he didn't have very strong support, that with voters between 55 and 64, he had nearly double or a little bit over double the support amongst that group. And if you're interested in that, I've posted it below in the comments, and you can take a look at that article over there at FiveThirtyEight and see what they had to say about that. But the thing I didn't really get a chance to talk too much about with Bill was ultimately what I call the podcast primary. There's an interesting thing that's happening in the world right now. We did a survey last month of Republican primary voters, and we found out that you know, long gone are the days of Walter Cronkite, and that actually that online shows, live streams, or podcasts are statistically tied for the second place is the number one source for news. The number one source for news is cable TV, and ultimately Fox News is the juggernaut there. But if you combine social media and online shows, live streams, and podcasts, that actually is now beating cable TV. And the interesting thing about that, and that's why I mentioned that it's smart that Vivek Ramaswamy is going on Bill O'Reilly's show, is that Bill O'Reilly is one of those shows that people are now going to seeking out different voices to get their news, largely because, well, we all have seen what's happened with media over the last few years. And it's interesting. So we even asked people what their favorite shows were. This is, again, Republican primary voters, but I'll show this to you if you're interested. There's the Joe and Rogan are the in our word cloud are the two biggest names, and ultimately what we do with the word clouds is more words are mentioned during what we call verbatim responses. We ask an open-ended question: what's the number one show that you watch that's a podcast or online program? And that's what people said. Joe Rogan. Bill O'Reilly's in there as well. Glenn Beck, Bongino, Tucker, Megyn Kelly. There's all sorts of people who are on here that get picked up when we just ask people, who do you actually go to find out your news? And it's interesting when we look at that. There's two candidates in particular who are the ones who are really doing this podcast primary strategy. You have RFK Jr. on the left, who's been very prolific, has been out there answering questions with anybody, as well as Vivek Ramaswamy, which is an interesting and new tactic that is showing up in the campaign. So that's something I wanted to mention, that we've been watching and we've been seeing that Republican primary voters and voters in general are seeking out other kinds of media to get their news. Additionally, another interesting thing that we saw in the last week or so is Fox News Digital did an article about Floridians praised DeSantis' response to Hurricane Idalia. Experts weigh in on what it means for 2024, and the reporter reached out to us and gave us an opportunity to talk about what we have seen in the Republican primary, but also just what we've seen in particular around leadership qualities. And one of the quotes that they used from us is pollster and political strategist Dustin Olson explained to Fox News Digital that his polling shows two of the top three important qualities Republican voters care about most in their polling is strength and determination and getting things done. And that is absolutely true. And I'll just show you in this recent survey that we did that we wanted to see, what is it the Republican primary voters, what are they looking for in their nominee and in the Republican nominee. And here's the example of this. This was another verbatim question, open-ended question. We just asked people what they had to say. You can see honesty, integrity are a couple of things, strength. But what we do after we ask these open-ended questions, then we go through and we code all these together, and we put them in buckets. The top three buckets, the first one was honesty and integrity, and 26.3% of people in the Republican primary voters said that is what they're looking for. The next highest is strength and determination, and that was 13.4%. And then the tied, I mean, it's exactly, within, it's actually the same number of people as is getting things done. That was 13.4% that said that. The next one after that is 10.3% patriotism and America first. But you get a sense for what that is. And between honesty and integrity, getting things done, and strength and determination, that is well over 50% of the Republican electorate say that's the number one thing that they're looking at. And ultimately, the point that I made in that article, regardless of who you're supporting, whether it's if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or you're supporting Trump or you're DeSantis, whoever it is, there's actually only one candidate currently in the race who actually has the ability to demonstrate executive leadership. Theoretically, Joe Biden could do so, but I don't think even Democrats are expecting that at this point. But that is what we noticed and we had a chance to talk about. And I posted that in the comments as well if you're interested in taking a look at that article. And along those lines, this is an example of one of our what we call verbatim reports. And we actually asked people specifically a few questions, let them tell us exactly in their own words, and then our team, our interviewers, report exactly what these folks say. And it's really fascinating. I'm going to read a few from here so you can actually see what real Americans have to say about the upcoming presidential election and the Republican primary in particular. So to show that we run the gamut, actually the first one I have here is somebody who says that their first choice is Asa Hutchinson. Out of 800 plus people, they're actually the only person, one out of 800 people who said that. And we asked, a few different verbatim questions, open-ended questions. And his second choice was Mike Pence, by the way. This person's Republican, they're conservative. Actually, it's a female, somewhere between the age of 18 and 34, makes more than $150,000. So we give you a sense of what their background is. And by the way, if you go to our website, if you go to pollingclub.com, you can actually get this and the entirety of the poll. And you can actually read through these yourself. We asked the question, in a few words, what would you say is the single most important issue or challenge facing the United States today? This person said, bringing unity. And a few words, what is the number one quality you're looking for in a Republican nominee for president? This person said, action. And we also gave people the chance to say in their own words how they would describe the indictments that have been made against Donald Trump. The question exactly is, in a few words, how would you describe the various indictments that have been made against Donald Trump? And this is a Asa Hutchinson supporter who their backup choice is Mike Pence. So you actually know, I'm not going to say the word here, but you'll be able to see that the full word, first word's B and the last word is S. So they say it's BS, and that's what they say. And this person gets their news from podcasts, which is another one that's interesting. The next person I have on here is a Donald Trump supporter whose second choice is Ron DeSantis. This is a pretty common situation. Another female between the age of 55 and 64, considers herself conservative, has a bachelor's degree, says the economy is the most important thing, and asking what the number one quality that she's looking for in the Republican nominee for president. She says clear, concise, business-like thinking. That's actually a pretty common one. That isn't in the top 4, but it is like 5th or 6th. What people said, business-like thinking is pretty common. And in a few words, how would you describe the various indictments? Annoying because there are more issues to deal with, and it makes me want to vote for him more, which I will tell you, it seems like that is one of the things that comes up. Another one, we've got a Donald Trump supporter who doesn't know who their second choice would be. They say the economy. They're looking for honesty, and the terms they use is a bunch of garbage. And they also get their news from podcasting. Next one, let's go to somebody who's a Ron DeSantis supporter specifically. It's really interesting. This is one that I'll give you this one because we were just talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. So one of the things that Bill and I were talking about is that Vivek Ramaswamy obviously understands that you have to be the number one second choice, and he's doing that, and he's the second choice for this Donald Trump supporter. This person says that they want someone who's going to be honest, they want someone who's going to be a leader, and in a few words, describe the various indictments. They say doesn't think this is an issue and doesn't think it should keep him from running for president. So that is Donald Trump supporter. Let me get back here to a Ron DeSantis. Okay, so this is the thing I mentioned with. I don't know if you guys can even see this, but it's a Ron DeSantis supporter who is their second choice is Donald Trump. So this is the thing: is it's hard to go after the front runner because it's one of the reasons why I don't really see that there's an actual primary going on right now. But I mean, this is just based off of the numbers. As I mentioned in the interview with Bill, our firm's not supporting anyone in the primary, but and we have people who are supportive of folks on both sides of the divide in the Democrat Republican. But it's interesting that this is the challenge that any one of these candidates would have is that the people who support them, their backup is Donald Trump. So they obviously like him to some extent. And this Ron DeSantis supporter, in a few words, what would you say is the single most important issue or challenge facing the United States? And they say the whole government is all screwed up. Straighten the Justice Department out, equal justice, the border is second, third would be spending. So a lot of the things that are concerning Republicans are similar even if you are supporting different people. Now, we asked them what the one quality that they're looking for in the next Republican nominee for president, and they say common sense and working for people, not other citizens in other countries and so forth. And on the how would you describe the various indictments? Again, this is a DeSantis supporter, and they say majority or political. So that's it gives you a sense for some of them as to what they say. Well, anyway, hopefully you found that interesting as to what real Americans are saying. You can go to pollingclub.com. You can check that out and see what you think about that. Now, today is 9/11, and there's been it's 22 years. It's a fateful day, I imagine, for anyone watching. You can remember what you were doing that day. I had actually recently, I was in Lexington, Virginia, going to my last year of college, but had just left the White House as an intern over the summer, and I just remember seeing people I'd worked with running out of the White House that morning, and just how remarkable that was. So recently, we asked a question. 2 years ago is the 20th anniversary, and another terrible tragedy happened as the Biden administration was pushing to get out of Afghanistan, and in my opinion, poorly handled the Afghanistan withdrawal. So we recently asked the question last month, on the week that was actually the 2-year anniversary of the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. We asked this question. So I think you'll find this interesting. This week, this was a month ago, marks the 2-year anniversary since the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, and February will mark the 2-year anniversary since Russia invaded Ukraine. And some argue the Biden administration's handling of Afghanistan emboldened Russia to invade Ukraine. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Well, the total percent who agree, this is Republican primary voters, this is the Republican primary survey, and we'll be asking this in a general election survey soon, but with Republicans saying that the fall of Afghanistan, how it was poorly handled, led to Russia being emboldened to invade Ukraine, 77.2% agree with that idea. 60.5% strongly agree. So that's a very solid majority. And it shows that this issue has affected presidents for quite some time. I went back and looked at the Bush, and I mentioned a minute ago that I had worked for President Bush and still like the guy a lot. But this is his approval through his administration. This is collected by the Pew Research Center. And I'd say this is generally, there's multiple people who track this, and this is generally pretty accurate. And I'll give you some comparisons. So you can see there in 9/11, he'd been, kind of in the honeymoon phase after having, the crazy 2000 election and the recount in Florida. People forget how close elections are difficult in this country. And in 2020, it was, a lot of consternation about that. But he was in the honeymoon phase of that time, and then the 9/11 attacks happened, and he went to historic levels of approval after that, and bringing the country together. But then you see the steady decline. You see the mission accomplished moment. All the different things that happened during that time period, capturing Saddam, Hurricane Katrina, the midterm elections, as he called it, the thumping, the surge, and then the financial bailout. And you can see that the approval had dipped under 25%, which is pretty remarkable for a drop from, I can't remember, I don't have the exact number there, but it was close to 90% approval at that time. And then to end up under 25%. And as a comparison, that was actually, Biden is now, in his disapproval, is in the mid to high 30s to 40%, depending on the pollster. And whoever the pollster is does make a difference, but that is pretty historically low disapproval. But that gives you a sense of how much things changed during one presidential administration. And of course, I think depending on where you are in history, people will see things differently, but that gives you a sense. I want to thank you all for spending some time talking about recent news, recent polling. If you'd like to learn more about our polling, you can go to pollingclub.com. Let us know what questions you would like to ask. What questions would you like us to pose to the American people? What topics would you like us to tackle? We will do that. Everybody who's a part of the polling club, we're going to be doing another national survey here soon. So I'll be putting out an email to everybody who's in the polling club, asking them what would they like asked? What topics would they like us to tackle? And you can be a part of that too, and to decide, what is it that we want to ask the American people, and what we would like to give voice to. So please go to pollingclub.com to do that. And of course, if you'd like to do some market research, if you'd like to commission a poll of your own, you can do that at pollingclub.com as well. But you can go to our main website, AmericanPulse.us, and do that. Feel free to post questions and comments after the live stream is done. But really do appreciate you spending some time with us tonight, and hope you have a great day, and appreciate you joining us.